Hello and welcome to a Week 14 edition of Establish the Bets. My name is Adam Levitan. As always, joined by the king of the NFL markets, Matthew Davidow, to talk all things sides, totals for the upcoming week. For those guys who don't know who Matt is, he is, of course, the man behind Deck Prism / Huddle, B2B business, taking on all comers. Anybody who wants to bet, Matt is here to take your action. Sorry, missed the show last week. That was completely on me. Had a family commitment out in New Jersey, but I am back now. Matt, how was your week 13? I missed it. I feel lost.
Yep. It was good as always. Yeah. Every week ends up being good for one reason or another in my mind.
I did want to ask before we get into it about the line on last night's game. So it opened 6. And obviously, like, everybody's left the Rams for dead. Raiders have been playing better, not good, but certainly better. Open 6. I saw it get to 6.5. I saw it get to 7. Late, though, even on public books, even on like DraftKings, I saw that line get back to just 6. That surprised me. I feel like I have a kind of a good pulse on where the public money is for an island game, for such a public spot, for it to get back to 6. So I'm curious what happened behind the scenes there with the money on Rams and Raiders.
Yeah, I think just everybody had the Rams. I was very surprised to see it leak up during the week. I thought the early week 6 looked kind of nuts to me, just from a standpoint of they just played. I mean, the Rams, the same team, just played Seattle. They closed like 6.5, 6 3/4 at home to a Seattle team that's definitely better in the market than than this Raiders team. And then the Rams played pretty well. They had the game almost won. And I thought there was like no way the line could be below that, i.e. Seattle's better than the Raiders, and the Rams played a good game. The Rams was pretty good, and people talk about this Rams team as being like very, bunch of like exhibition or whatever, but they're really not missing many players. It's just that they were just so thin to begin with. They also got back a couple offensive linemen for the Seattle game. I think I saw you tweet, and you might still be. Like, I doubt you're right in the Rams are absolutely the worst offensive line with the current 5 people that played yesterday and played Sunday. They won on a lot of running plays yesterday. First, I'm talking about the Rams offensive line. So I think the Rams. Now, what's terrible on the Rams is the skills, the running backs, the receivers. I mean, it's funny. I was like, literally, I asked, I was like, I wonder what happened to Akers, like what his deal was, and then I saw him playing. I'm like, I wonder if they were just making excuses because they were trying to trade him. Mm-hmm. Before people realized it, like all you had to do was blow on him hard, and he was going down like a sack of potatoes.
Right. To me, they're thin, and then they lose their quarterback, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Aaron Donald's not playing. They're already thin, So I don't know, man. I thought the Raiders clearly should have and almost did and should have covered the game last night. But yeah, really interesting game. Second thing, before we get into this week's slate, I don't know if you saw, Matt, the story of this school teacher who allegedly had $90K on Morocco to reach the quarterfinals. And, obviously, like, red flags go up right away. School teacher, he says, oh, I'm just a D-Gen. D-Gens don't bet 90,000. D-Gens don't bet on teams to make the quarterfinals exactly. They might bet, a few hundred or 1,000 on a long shot to win the World Cup. They don't bet to reach exactly the quarterfinals. So my immediate thought, like, it took me 1 second. I was like, oh, this guy's a beard for some big group. But what is he doing giving interviews to the press? But this is like standard, right? Like, beards are always blasting off for big groups. I know you guys don't care. You guys welcome any action from beard. You don't have to be a beard to bet against Matt. Or in a lot of these places, typically, et cetera, et cetera. But for a lot of books, you do need a beard. In other words, someone whose account looks fishy to bet for you. So I don't know if you have any take or if you're even allowed to give any take on all this stuff. I just thought it was interesting. And like, so many people are like, oh, good for him. School teacher bet 90,000 on Morocco. Like, that's so ridiculous. There's no way he's just a random dude who bet 90K on Morocco to reach exactly the quarterfinals.
But my first take, anytime I see something like this, like when I'm talking about like a media report about something that, like we know well, like this is, our industry, and probably most listeners would agree with this. People listening to the show know a lot about betting, a lot about sports betting. And whenever the most popular media outlets put out a story that's like, you don't really know what's wrong with it, but all it makes me think is how much every other story I read about every other industry is likely also just as much garbage. How like we were reading about, I mean, the FTX thing for one is something I don't, really understand or know a ton about, and just a quick example. And I have to imagine that every story by these outlets is just garbage to anybody who's actually versed in a field or news. So that would be my first reaction. As far as the guy that actually made I have no idea. I know Morocco's been supposedly a very public team in this World Cup. It would surprise me that FanDuel had like a line that was so far off, especially with that much variance. That would like I don't know what the situation is with this, but there's a couple things that could be interesting to our audience as far as like why I would think it wouldn't be a beard. One, if it's an account that's winning and they're pretending like it's losing, right? Which is kind of what we're talking about here, beard or no beard, who cares, right? If it's an account that they're getting a lot of money, that someone is able to beat FanDuel, which I mean, there sure are many people that are able to beat FanDuel for one, able to beat FanDuel, especially able to beat them in a way that's not like just taking advantage of arbs and mistakes and stuff. Then you just wouldn't play this long shot that's going to cause all this publicity. What could the possible edge have been on this? Couldn't have been much. So I would be, again, I have no idea. I have no information. I don't know if the price was good or bad. Just from, this is not the type of bet that you would put into a valuable account, period.
Right.
So I don't know what the story is, but I honestly doubt it's that.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's just the people are so shocked by the beard stuff. Like even like Harbaugh went on and was like, yeah, I had Ashton Kutcher and Floyd Mayweather betting for me. And it happens all the time. It's pretty standard, right? And I know you guys aren't looking for that stuff, but places like DraftKings or MGM or PointsBet or whatever, they're actively looking for, beard type stuff, I assume. So yeah. Anyways, let's get into the games this week.
Back to the games.
The game of the week.
I do think the whole thing is fascinating.
Oh, it's fast. I love that stuff. It's so interesting. Okay. The game the public is talking about is Vikings Lions. Vikings, of course, are 10-2. Lions, our Lions, I think Lions are still good. I think they've played much, 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 much better lately and actually have a pretty good chance now to get over that 6.5 number. But anyways, 10-2 Vikings are a 2-point dog in Detroit. That is making the public go crazy. I know we've talked about this before, but any thoughts here on the Lions, Vikings, and where the money is? Because honestly, I think this line is pretty right. And I'm a big Lions guy, but I still would lean Vikings personally. But it is what it is. What do you think about Vikings Lions?
I think the Vikings should be a small favorite. One interesting thing from a handicapping perspective that I think a lot of people that model sports and you look at data and such miss is that even though the records don't really matter, I mean, look at the game last night, for instance. Like you said, the Raiders were clearly better. And I mean, we could also talk forever about how incredible it was to have a quarterback get off the bus and play a game 2 days later. But the score of the game, who wins the game, who loses the game, they're all such small samples. The ball bounces a little bit this way, a little bit that way. Here's a win, here's a loss. All these teams are so close. All the players are so close. The NFL we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. So the whole record, but on the side of that is everything that can't be exactly measured, by data or by a data set or if you have two teams and they have the exact same, say, per play. I mean, here's maybe a good way to look at it. Vikings and Lions. Let's say both these teams have the exact same per play metric on offense. Let's just say that's the case, okay? And then I told you to bet who's going to be better from here out on the season, right? I think it's pretty obvious that, at least me, I would bet that the team that's 10-2 probably is going to be better than the team that's 5-7, even if both are the same. Every small thing, everything that's not quite getting measured in the stats is probably in their advantage. I mean, obviously a lot of luck too, but I think it's a lot of old school bookies talking about losing a baseball in August. All the models are no good in August. Why are the people always beating me in August? Well, the players are consistently betting on the winning teams, and a lot of times I think the winning teams are winning teams for a reason. And if that isn't getting into the market number, well, then those people are going to have accidentally have an edge. I think there was a case for a while in baseball in August, less so now. I think it's being included now by the better models. And I think that there's some truth to that in football. If you have two teams that look exactly even on paper, and one wins all their games and one loses all their games, well, call me crazy, but give me the team that wins the games.
Yeah, and I think this is where, like, quote unquote analytics rubs people the wrong way. Like Davidow is accepting that there are things that we cannot measure, right? Like there's accepting that there's data that we do not have. We cannot measure an ability to make big plays, maybe in tight games, fourth quarter type stuff or whatever, has gone the Vikings' way. Who knows? So yeah, I think it's the way the best people are not just straight data freaks, and they're also not just hand in the dirt football freaks. There's some mix of both, and so yeah, I think that's super interesting.
All things being equal, give me the winners.
Right. So you think that this should be Vikings should be favored in this game?
I was shocked by the early money in this, and I don't know where it came from or who bet. I have no idea. I haven't seen anybody bet the Lions. Right. I don't think anyone's going to bet the Lions not at this price. Maybe there's somebody out there with a better, better prediction or better than. But I would be very surprised if this didn't actually close Vikings' favorite too, because like you said, obviously the public on Sunday is going to be in the Vikings. Another thing I want to, we've talked about this briefly, especially as we're, we have a show on Friday. We're talking about line moves like during the week, and it's important to understand that a lot of the people that are what we're calling the public or recreational or whatever, it's not even that they're betting this team. They don't bet. There is no bets. I mean, I can't. It's also, so I always find it funny. I'll see this stuff on Twitter about, I'm pummeling this line, and then I go look at our actual books, and we haven't even taken a bet, right? So a lot of times you see this stuff on Twitter, or this guy, I'm pummeling this. No, when everybody bets? Sunday morning, an hour from the game. That's when everybody bets. Right. So now it's almost doesn't, really, everything is going on now. It's just kind of forming that line. And who's betting are professional groups, people actually handicapping, people that know that they want to win. They have to get to the line before somebody else might get to the line, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. So do you think that line moves close? What can people take from a line move on Sunday? Like if the Vikings end up going from +2 on Saturday to -1 on Sunday, what can people take from that?
Well, I've said this before on the show, and it's not a very popular opinion, especially as if we're, particularly we have a show where we're analyzing this stuff. I don't think you don't take much from it. You know what you can possibly take from it? It'd be as better, just from a standpoint of every time the line moves in general, that's a good thing for bettors. That every time the line is moving, that presents an opportunity as a bettor to have a lower theoretical hold. And, what I mean by that, if you haven't, read the book or, thought about this stuff deeply, which, who could blame you? Probably have a life. But anytime, if you're looking at, let's say the regulated U.S. books, FanDuel, DraftKings, et cetera, you're talking about playing the NFL at -110, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I guarantee that if everybody always had the same number, the amount of people that could actually win at that, because you're now overcoming a 4.7% hold, the amount of people that could actually win if everybody always had the same number at all times and everything always moved together. Yeah. I mean, man, there sure aren't many. Maybe single digits could win into that environment.
Right.
That's not how it works. Everybody's got different numbers. So as long as you're shopping, as long as you're taking advantage of having multiple outs, and I mean, obviously this is one of the things that we stress on the show, and ETR obviously makes money in some way when you go sign up accounts, and that's obviously part of this gig, right? Mm-hmm. And the more accounts you have, if you have two accounts and one has -110 and one has even money, well, you've just cut your hold in half. The amount of money that you bet, you can just do the math. You just improved your result by that much, just from getting to bet when those two lines are different. Doesn't matter which side you pick, you're going to end up better off no matter what. So one way to look at all these early line moves, and people watching the show, you want a great way to win. Get your work done early, especially if you're not betting a lot of money. Get your work. If your work's done early, these lines are moving a lot. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Keep an eye on your house. Anytime you see a situation where there's no hold, well, pick a team you like and bet on them right then. I'll bet whatever work you're doing is gonna beat no juice. Where it won't win is when you're gonna play into one of these big holds. So build yourself that hold. Even money on both sides. Pick your winner, fire it in. You'll end up with more money than you started the season with that way.
100%. And there's an art to this too that Matt's referring to called steam chasing. I'm sure a lot of people maybe aren't familiar, but what he's basically saying is that when a line moves at some books, it won't move at another book for a little bit, and they're lagging behind. And that would be what's called chasing steam. I think books don't love it if you're doing it at a large scale, but I think that it's, for most people listening to this, is probably fine.
Yeah, I mean, if you're taking the staler line, the line that hasn't moved yet at the more recreational books, your account longevity is probably shorter there. That's true. But my take is, don't even look at it. Don't try to guess why the line moved. At least this is, especially if you're like me, honestly, and like most people that are, I think, watching the show, you're looking for a combination of entertainment and making money, right? You're not about to throw away the steady job as hell. Let me just grind this sports. You're looking for a spot where it meets. So in my mind, stop trying to figure out which is the sharp side or whatever. Do a little bit of your own. Pick who you like. However you choose to do that. Do it and then when the line moves, don't look at it as, oh, I want to take that old line. You don't even have to know which way it moved. And this is also one of my points about the Sunday and Monday moves. I don't think they're that great. Be perfectly fine taking the side against the move. And that'll keep your account. I mean, if you're always going right against the move, especially when a player the book considers sharp, that's gonna keep you account forever that way too. Sure. So don't look at it as if, oh, this line just went from 3 to 3.5. This must be sharp money. I want to take the -3. Don't look at it that way. Look at it like, hey, I can bet plus 3.5 -10 here, or -3 -10 here. Therefore, my opinion only has to win like 50.7% of the time, and I'm going to be a winner. And then just pick your side.
Yeah.
And you'll do just fine. Don't overthink it. Don't put your time into guessing where the sharp money is. Put the time into just making a better prediction yourself. Use some tools. Use, ETR, use, unabated, or friends on the screen. Use anything that might help edge. It's also entertaining. Why I love ETR. I'm entertained every time I read. I spent 3 hours on reading about NBA players yesterday. It wasn't because I thought, oh, I'll get more edge here. Pick your team and make your bet. So
I like that. I like that. And honestly, I've spent too much time in my life trying to figure out where the sharp money is, and I hear you. Like it's a fool's errand at times. And by the way, Matt did allude to having money on enough books to always get the best number. Shout out to Established Run /offers. Exactly. They'll pay you to sign up and you get the best line. What a great deal. All right, quickly through some of these other games here. Deshaun Watson fell on his face, man. Deshaun Watson was absolutely egregious. And maybe that's expected when you haven't played a football game in 700 days. I know a part of Rufus's model for golf is like how much competitive golf have the guys played lately. Deshaun Watson had not played in more than 700 days. My question now is, how do you re-rate Deshaun Watson? I mean, how much priors can you have on him? He fell on his face. Is that just a one-off that you throw out, or is that built into the sample, and by how much? And what do you think about Browns, Bengals? Bengals are a 5.5 point favorite right now.
Well, I mean, it says people that have listened to me, rant. No, I'm not a fan of Deshaun Watson to begin with. I would have called him a below average quarterback, 2 years ago, like right after he played the last game, forgetting anything else. He makes spectacular. To me, he's a lot like Russell Wilson. He makes a lot of spectacular plays, but in between those spectacular plays that you see on Red Zone or you see on Sports Center or whatever, are a whole bunch of like easy ones that he like consistently misses. And I mean, I had the game on, but I didn't watch a lot of the Houston game. But I don't think Deshaun Watson's very good. Now, could he be good? Of course he could. He's got a huge arm. He's hella athletic. He can make some fantastic plays. Could he get better and become a top 5 quarterback? Yes, he can. That's why that deal was so much better than Russell Wilson's, because there's shitloads of upside with Watson, right? Whereas there's no upside with Wilson. He's over the hill. But as of right now, he's just not that good. So now Brissett's not that good either. I do think Watson is an overall upgrade on Brissett. The fact he hasn't played a lot, I don't know. I mean, I don't know who remembers watching Watson in the preseason, but he looked absolutely disgustingly bad in his few preseason series. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe here's another one for you. Playing sports at this level is hard. And the difference between being just a half step quicker and looking like a world beater and being a half step slower and being literally out of the league. These are razor thin edges. Everything you eat, everything you train, everything you practice goes into this. I mean, Le'Veon Bell being maybe one of a handful of examples I can think of guys who were great, missed time, and then just weren't even close to the same player. And I mean, heck, Watson's been out for 2 years.
Yeah.
What what has he been doing? I mean, not he's been out for 2 years, but I think a lot of I know myself. I spent a lot of time this fall really thinking about how the brain works and health, mental health, physical health. Well, one thing that has hit me a whole bunch of times is stress. Stress is not good for the human body.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a lot more stressful things than everything you work for your entire life being not only about to leave. I mean, he could have gone to jail. He had to have had many nights. I mean, at least for me, and I was being accused of what he was accused of. I think I'd have had many nights where I was like, I don't know, I'm not going to sleep well tonight. I don't know what's going. And this went on for months and months, and maybe that stress took a toll.
Sure.
Now maybe he'll show up next week and he'll be back towards the top 5. But those are some of my thoughts on it.
That's the thing. Like, I don't really have an opinion on how he's going to play this week. I think he'll play better, but I don't know, man. Like, it's really hard, and it's a really hard game to handicap. There are some 6s out there, some 5.5s. I assume you don't really have any take on where this line's going to go. Currently, Bengals minus 5.5. There
was sharp money that drove it off the 6 to the 5.5. Okay. I'm guessing that money's in, and there'll be Cincinnati money from here. Plenty of groups don't like Cleveland to start with, and I do think their recreational players will be on Cincinnati. I mean, Cincinnati's been great lately, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Going a lot of games. They're looking like the Super Bowl form again. The receivers are, everybody watched them beat the Chiefs last week and look good doing it. I would think if you like Cincinnati, now's the time to bet. If you like Cleveland, shop the last minute.
Okay. I want to ask about the Brock Purdy thing, big cock Brock, if you will. So I understand that like different quarterbacks mean different things. And I know the way you do it is with simulations. And so it's not Jimmy Garoppolo is worth this much more than Purdy. I do think, though, that San Francisco losing their quarterback means less than, say, the Chiefs or whatever, because it's such a system. They have these outrageous guys who get yards after catch. All you're asked to do is hand the ball off, get it to these guys in space, and let them go nuts. You're not being asked a lot when you play quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. So to me, it's not that big of a difference from Jimmy Garoppolo to Purdy, even if you think Purdy is way worse. So I don't know if that's a bad take or whatever. We do have San Francisco.
No, it's a great take.
So we have San Francisco 3.5 here. What do you think about this line and the Purdy stuff?
Well, to add on to that take, I mean, I think what you're seeing is the current San Francisco system. I mean, everything that they put in for the last 2 or 3 years has been one read type stuff. Like this will be open, throw this. Throw this unless it's covered. Then super simple stuff. You don't see them, having a man beater on one side and a zone beater on the other side and making the quarterback figure it out. You just don't see that. You didn't see it with Garoppolo. You didn't see it with Lance. I mean, when Mullins was in there with Bethard, you just haven't seen it at all. And that because this is their system, this is why Purdy was able to come into that game and they still moved the ball some. Now, Purdy was terrible. Purdy was inaccurate. He threw the ball all the time. And the biggest difference we'll see, which we didn't see because either they didn't get into many situations or, I did watch that game. I don't remember any of them though, but there will be a 3rd and 5 and it'll be a situation where it would be much better chance of getting the 3rd and 5 if they were able to call a play that relied a little bit on the quarterback's, on the quarterback's brain. And Garoppolo wasn't the best of those plays, that's for sure. He had some bad games, but he also had some good games. He had some good reads where he threw the ball on time. There's a recent game he played really well. There's an upside to Garoppolo that's just, not there with Purdy. If the play is not working, the play is not going to work. And I was surprised. I guess they didn't even try for Mayfield. Not that that's any good, but there's enough of a drop off between Garoppolo and Purdy that while you're right, the system does. If this was any other team, they'd be just completely screwed. But it's not because I also don't think it's. I think they have the system because of the quarterbacks, because of the players. I don't think it's, here's the system, therefore we'll just fill something in. The reason they've done this is because they haven't had any quarterback that's been able to, make these reads. I'm sure Shanahan would love to have a situation where he had a quarterback that was capable of not only throwing to his first read, but he doesn't. He sure doesn't now. So,
Yeah. And by the way, the futures market, for what it's worth, is still on San Francisco. And I think it's part of the reason is like the underlying stuff on Seattle is so bad. And, I was a little surprised Seattle is only 3.5 for here against Carolina at home. But yeah, I think, the futures market is still on San Francisco, even with Purdy in there.
Right. I'm surprised Seattle's only 3.5 for myself, but remember 3.5 4 is a lot. Carolina's off a bye. Carolina looked a lot better just visually with Darnold than before. Yeah. And Seattle's still below average football team despite how good Gino's playing.
God, Gino is so good. Good question here from Terrence. He says, why is the Broncos Chiefs total at 44 when the Broncos score 9 or 16 every single game? Are we expecting the Chiefs to score versus arguably the best defense? So yeah, I mean, the Broncos cannot score a touchdown. So why is the total here 44?
Well, as somebody who, always makes his total higher and always needs over every single week. And it's funny. I read somebody recently after the last game, like, okay, this isn't hard. Every game goes under. You've heard me talk on the show about how a coach can make every game go over or under, right? And it's like, okay, wait. And I'll tell you though, every week, all of our inputs into our models, I'm turning them severely I'm turning in a way that makes the total lower. Every week, come out higher. Sure enough, I'm at like 44.5, 45 this week. Denver has been absolutely, completely atrocious on third downs. And in the red zone. There's some good reasons for that. Terrible play calling, terrible quarterbacking. But some of that's also luck. If you actually say, you know what, this is what we see is what we get with Denver. This is exactly what they're supposed to do, say on third down, then your bet should be on the Chiefs, not on under. Like if for whatever reason the fact that Denver can never score any points is predictive, then just bet the Chiefs. So it might be. I mean, talk about it. I mean, it's like every week you can bet the Denver team. Bet Denver team total under, bet the Chiefs. Don't bet the total. The total is probably close to. If the line is close to right, the total is close to right.
Okay, last one before we get out of here is this Bills-Jets game. I'm not sure that the market has reacted enough to how much better this team is with Mike White than Zach Wilson. Like, I thought this line would be lower. We've seen the Bills take their foot off the gas. In other words, their pass rate has not been as high as it's been. When they're up 20 to 30, they used to air it out. They're not doing that the last few weeks, maybe because of Josh Allen's elbow. I don't know. And also now they're getting James Cook involved and Devin Singletary involved. They're trying to run the ball more. So I don't know, man. I think we had Mike White. We were showing Mike White overs massively last week. Like the props market was not ready for Mike White. Right. We took both of them. I'm still not sure that even the sides and totals market is aware of how much better Mike White is. But this is so many eyes are on this. What do you think about Bills -10 home against the Jets?
So there's a lot of interesting stuff. And there has been an interesting season. Starting with the Bills, I believe that they're running the ball a lot more because whichever game they were bad in, I'm trying to remember which game it was offhand. I guess I could prepare better, and then this would be a situation. But they were bad in the game, and they were bad because the other team knew they were going to pass. And I think finally McDermott or whoever's making I guess it's McDermott. I mean, Dabo's gone. So you know what? If we can't threaten to run the ball, it's really going to hurt us as this season goes on. And I feel like he made a commitment right then to just try to run more every spot he could. If it was successful, if he was in the right game situation, I believe he said to himself, we have to be a better running team or we can't get to the type of team offense I think we can be. Therefore, we're going to make a commitment to run it. I don't think it's the elbow at all. I think it's that they think they need to run it to be better. I also think they've been better since they've run it. Like the fact that they've been running, I don't think has been necessarily a bad thing in those spots, and them not covering the games, I think has been turnovers and luck. I mean, let's remember they were up 17 and they had a bad bounce that would have put them up 24 versus the Vikings. And one of the, they had a number of chances to score on both the Dolphins. They've had some red zone bad luck, some poor decisions by Allen. I think the Bills are a very, very, very good team. So I don't think it's been now on the other side, Mike White is a legitimate NFL quarterback. Zach Wilson, I mean, we talked about this going into the season, was probably not even top 32, and he was going to start. Could he get better? Of course he could, and we've seen so many bad plays. Mike White gets rid of the football. They have good receivers. I mean, Elijah Moore's back. He gets rid of the football. The ball comes out. The NFL, you get the ball out, good things can happen. Your receivers make catches. You get pass interference calls. Don't take sacks, which gives you more chances. All stuff that, obviously Wilson was not really, equipped to do just yet.
Mm-hmm.
And the Jets don't have much of a running game right now. I mean, they don't, obviously no real Brees Hall. The backs that they have are much more passing game backs than running game backs. And I don't, it doesn't, never felt to me like a coaching staff that like thought they had to like run the ball for old school type reasons. I mean, Salah's a defensive guy, but my read is he doesn't have much to do with the offense. And if they're able to pass, they're going to pass. I think the pass rate is going to be way, way up the whole rest of the way. I think Mike White over props have to be good, receiver stuff. I mean, when Michael Carter comes back, if he's getting the usage, I mean, Michael Carter's good out of the backfield, and White loves him. White wants to throw to him every time if he can. White is going to check the ball down to Carter over and over and over again. When you talk about like your props, fantasy, etc. So a lot of stuff going on here. I made this line 8.5, which is not much different from 10. I mean, there's not much meat on the bone there. The total's interesting. If you look at these teams of the season, you're like there could be some weather. But if you think about Mike White throwing the ball 100 times, and over could be good if there's not snowing.
They threw the ball with Mike White against the Bears 20 times in the first half in a rainstorm. I mean, they're throwing it with Mike White. But the props market has gotten much sharper, man. I mean, they adjusted. This week we're not actually showing any overs on the Mike White stuff this week. Doesn't mean that it's not a good bet, but we're actually not showing any. So yeah, it's interesting. Anyways, we've taken up enough of Matt's time here. Appreciate
I enjoy this so much, Adam. I can talk about this shit all night. You mentioned about the bad week. I mean, like, man, if I ever say, man, that week, when literally my job is to sit here and think about NFL football for 15 hours, if I ever complain about that, somebody shake me.
I feel the same way, but I still complain all the time. So it is what it is. All right. Make sure you're following Matt at Davidow Matthew on the Twitter machine for his controversial quarterback takes and his controversial fourth down decision takes. Hopefully you're following me already at Adam Levitin. For Matt. For producer Adam, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.